and welcome back to Sax Wizard. My name's Michael, and if you like free saxophone lessons, then think about subscribing to the channel. Today we're taking a look at bebop scales. In this video, we'll look at what bebop scales are, how to convert a normal scale into a bebop scale, three of the most common types of bebop scales, and lastly, why bebop scales exist in the first place. Okay, let's get into the video. What is a bebop scale? The most common scales in Western music are made up of 7 notes. If you want to get technical, these are called heptatonic scales, meaning 7 tones. For example, your standard major scales and minor scales are both made up of 7 notes. Take C major and C minor as an example. A bebop scale is simply an 8-note version of a normal scale, a so-called octatonic scale. We add 1 note to our normal 7-note scale to modify it and turn it into a bebop scale. And in a nutshell, that's basically what a bebop scale is, an 8-note scale. And theoretically, you can turn any 7-note scale into a bebop scale. Where we add this extra note is the important part, and I'll get into the reason behind this later in the video. Types of bebop scale. I'm going to show you 3 different types of bebop scale in this video. Major, minor, and dominant, as these are probably the most common types of bebop scale. Here's a standard 7-note C major scale. To turn our standard major scale into a bebop major scale, we add 1 extra note in between the 5th and the 6th. So we're adding in a sharp 5. In the example of C major, our sharp 5 is a G sharp. You can hear that adding this extra note creates a mini chromatic run in the middle of the scale. And this is why we call this extra note a chromatic passing tone. It's this chromatic element which gives the bebop scale its characteristic sound. Much like a standard major scale, you typically play your major bebop scale over a major chord. Let's take a look at the bebop minor scale. Here's a standard 7-note D natural minor scale. This time we're going to add 1 extra note in between the 7th and the root note. So this time we're adding in a major 7th, which in the example of D minor is a C sharp. And again, you can hear that adding this extra note creates a mini chromatic run within the scale. Just like the minor scale, you would typically play your bebop minor scale over a minor chord. The last example we're going to look at in this video is the bebop dominant scale. Here's a standard 7-note D mixolydian scale, also called the D dominant scale. To turn the mixolydian scale or dominant scale into the bebop dominant scale, we add 1 extra note in between the 7th and the root note. We're adding the major 7th. In this example, the major 7th is a C sharp. You'll notice that we add the same note, the major 7, to both our minor and dominant scales to create our bebop scale versions. Like the mixolydian or dominant scale, we would typically play our bebop dominant scale over a dominant chord. What is the point of bebop scales? So hopefully now you understand what a bebop scale is and how to convert a normal scale into a bebop scale. But why do bebop scales even exist? What's the point? Why do we play them? The answer is all to do with chord tones. Let's use D minor as our example. If we play 8th notes up a standard D minor scale, starting on the root note over a D minor 7 chord, we can see that to start with, all the chord tones land on the beat. We land on D, F, A, and C, which is great. This is exactly what we want. But if we keep playing up the standard D minor scale over, say, 2 octaves, we start to hit non-chord tones. Firstly E, then G, then B flat. If we look at playing down the standard D minor scale, the problem becomes much more obvious much more quickly. When we play down the D minor scale, we start to land on non-chord tones almost straight away. We land on B flat, then G, then E. Landing on these non-chord tones isn't good. Unless you're intentionally playing out, you want these notes to be passing tones. You don't want to be landing on non-chord tones, as these notes will clash with the underlying chords. and it basically just won't sound very nice. The bebop scale essentially fixes this problem. If we play our D minor bebop scale over a D minor 7 chord, we always land on a chord tone. It doesn't matter if we play up or down the scale. We always land on either a D, F, A or C on the beat. And we can keep playing over 2 or 3 octaves and we'll continue to always hit these chord tones. One really important thing to mention is that in order for the bebop scale to work its magic, you need to start on a chord tone. This can either be the root, the 3rd, the 5th or the 7th, it doesn't matter. If you don't start on a chord tone, then you'll be landing on non-chord tones the whole time, which sort of defeats the whole point of the bebop scale. Bebop scales are a really useful tool for creating longer licks, so definitely an important one to get to grips with. And of course, like with any scale, you don't have to play all 8 notes all of the time. You can just take little snippets of the bebop scale and integrate them into your playing. I hope you found this introduction to the bebop scale useful. Drop me a like if you did enjoy the video. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.